Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Hipster Camel podcast. My name is Jody Paramore, Director of University Assessment at Camel University, and I am one of the co-hosts here. And my other co-host, I will let her introduce herself.
And my name is Jennifer Seagraves. I'm the Instructional Pedagogy and Curriculum Materials Media Librarian.
And we have two guests with us today to talk about one of the 11 high impact practices, what this podcast does. If you are new to listening, we look at the 11 high impact practices that have been outlined by the American Association of Colleges and Universities and look at how we are using these within our university, Camel University in Buies Creek, North Carolina. So this could apply to any university because these are really global. These high impact practices have kind of a global reach. And so we are just kind of involved in the scholarship of these high impact practices. And so our two guests today are going to talk about the global learning high impact practice. You will also, within this global learning high impact practice, which we will look at a little bit later more in depth, you will see study abroad, or sometimes you may hear it called study away, that are part of this particular high impact practice. And so our two guests went to Puerto Rico this past summer on a study abroad trip. And this is an interdisciplinary trip. And so today we're going to give them a chance to talk about their experiences with using a high impact practice and to kind of get you to think about within your context at Camel University or beyond, how you might better utilize this high impact practice in your work. So I will get us started by passing off to our co-host, Jennifer Seagraves, to get us going.
Sure. We'd love to get you warmed up a little bit and just ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. So I'll ask a question and then I'll have each of you answer. So first one, do you prefer orange or black?
Black.
Orange.
I heard two different, black and orange. Awesome. Okay. So next one is where is the last place you traveled?
Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it was Puerto Rico.
Great. Favorite spot on campus?
Guess my office. It sounds weird, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's your safe spot.
I think the classroom.
Great. And last thing, a favorite place you have traveled?
I had been in Spain several times, so I think that's my favorite place to go.
Most of the time, I just choose to go back home when I have free time. So I would still say it's always my safe place.
Where is your home?
Puerto Rico.
Great. Well, thanks for warming up with us.
So a little bit about, first question is just how did this come about, this trip you had this summer? Just give us a little bit of context because you guys, Dr. Reyes, well, let's go ahead and Dr. Reyes, if you could just introduce yourself and did Dr. Ibarra introduce yourself, just kind of give us some background on what you do at Camel University. And then we can move on to how you guys got together because you're in two different departments, how you got together for a study abroad trip. So Dr. Reyes, you want to go first?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Dr. Leila Reyes Ruiz, originally from Puerto Rico, like I just said. I've been at Camel for 2 years. This is my 3rd year. And so I'm pretty new. Pretty much that's how this trip started. And I'm in the biology department.
I'm Dr. Renee Ibarra. I had been here at Campbell I'm starting my 15th year. So I'm not all like sometimes we celebrate like 25 years or 30 years, but I'm 15 years. Going back to your question, I think for our department it's difficult to take a good amount of students to go and study Spanish. So I think I went to Dr. Waldron to talk about what my plan was for the study abroad. And I suggested if we can work with the biology department. So I think that's how we connected the Spanish and the biology. At some point, when I was on 2012, I went to Costa Rica with Dr. Bartlett to study biology in Spanish. And then it was a long time ago, so I decided maybe it's a good time to connect to different departments and do like study abroad program together.
And okay, and so so the students were primarily from which department? Or was it a mix? Or were they kind of representing one particular field?
Well, even for the biology course that we taught, we offer at a low level enough that honor students from any department could take their biology GCC requirement covered by this course because it was a lab-based course. So we had, even though we were teaching biology, biodiversity of Puerto Rico, we had many students that were not in the biology department. They were just completing the GCC requirement for a biology course.
Okay. So there weren't like Spanish only students. Were they getting credit for Spanish too while they were there, or you were assisting the trip as a faculty member? Just kind of curious how that worked. Whoever wants to chime in.
Okay, so we pretty much thought about, we had two different courses, right? The Spanish and the biology course. The Spanish course, whichever student, right, needed Spanish completed. And the biology course was, okay, we don't want to just have biology majors taking the biology course. What can we do to encourage other students from other departments to be part of the trip? That's why we decided to keep it at a 100 to 200 level biology course. So I was teaching together with Deborah Weaver, Dr. Deborah Weaver, which is also in the biology department. She also came with us. It was my first study abroad, so she offered to help. And we together taught the biology course. Then Dr. Rene Ibarra taught the Spanish course. If that
Okay.
makes sense.
So both courses were going parallel. Students were getting credit for both courses at the same time or
No,
at different students.
they could choose one or the other or both. And we actually had two students, if I'm not
Taking
wrong, right?
both Spanish and
Taking
biology.
both.
Wow.
Yep.
Man, what a cool way to learn, like actually being immersed in a environment like that.
I love your inspiration of Costa Rica and the biodiversity, and you've got to invite me back to go and join you on that trip if you ever go again, because I recently went to Costa Rica and oh my goodness, the flora, the fauna, it was just amazing. So I just can't imagine what your students experienced here in Puerto Rico and incorporating the Spanish as well. Basically, I just want to know a little bit about what you learned from participating in this experience. Dr. Reyes Ruiz, you said this was your first study abroad. So what are your big takeaways and what'd you learn?
They definitely, I like how when you are actually, practicing or like being immersed in the biology, you learn it better. One thing was to talk about in class because we taught in the spring semester for 2 hours a week about the ecology and biology, biodiversity of Puerto Rico, but seeing them immersed in the tropical forest or in the dry forest and being able to be like, I know that plant, or oh, I know that. We talked about that in class. You can see how well they recall and remember those concepts. And also, I just learned about the students because right, being just finishing my second year, in like interacting with students in the classroom is very different than interacting with them for 2 weeks abroad. So it did help me kind of have a better understanding on our students.
Probably a good relationship builder, right? Being around students that much in that environment, away from the States and all. Dr. Ibarra, you want to follow up on that? Some things that maybe stuck out to you, highlights for you that you learned?
I think that the experience reaffirmed the value of experimental learning. One thing is in the class when you teach, for example, in my case, I teach Spanish, so I teach the language, the verbs, the structure. But also, once you are in the country, you're able to incorporate more real world activities, which are a little bit richer in culture. So we were able to bring a salsa teacher to teach the students how to dance salsa, and the teacher doesn't speak English, so the students have to navigate what she's saying. So that's a real concrete cultural activity that we did. The cooking class. So I think I learned that one thing is the classroom activities that we do, but also being able to incorporate those kind of culturally context activities that are meaningful for the students. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I was able to appreciate.
It sounds like such a sensory experience too.
Yeah.
And I love what you talked about earlier about being able to see your students, like see the learning click in their brains.
But a high impact practice, according to AAC&U, the definition you can see on the screen, high impact practices, the teaching and learning practices listed and described below are designated as, quote, high impact practices or HIPs. And that's where the Hipster Camel podcast coming from. The HIPs, that's where all that comes together if you haven't come up with that yet. And if you're watching us and you're not from Campbell, our mascot is a camel. So there you go. So that's where that's the camel tie-in. So anyway, so based on evidence of significant educational benefits for students who participate in them, including and especially those from demographic groups historically underserved by higher education, these practices take many different forms depending on learner characteristics and on institutional priorities and context. So I'm just going to also read the specific wording that they have for the global learning one. And then anything you want to speak of like, maybe like, you're like, oh yeah, I can see where we did this on our trip or touched on that in our trip. So the way they've written it here, many colleges and universities now emphasize courses and programs that help students explore cultures, life experiences, and worldviews different from their own. These studies, which may address United States diversity, world cultures, or both, often explore difficult differences such as racial, ethnic, or gender inequality, or continuing struggles around the globe for human rights, freedom, and power. Frequently, intercultural studies are augmented by experiential learning in the community and or by study abroad. So any of that definition from the AAC&U, anything stand out from that as far as what you think you or your students experienced on this particular trip to Puerto Rico?
I think I'm thinking about our trip to Loiza, which and I think we did it during the orientation. Before departure, we talked to the students about the history of Puerto Rico, the culture of Puerto Rico, and we talk about some cultural issues like to adapt to tolerance and all of that. And the reason I bring Loiza, it's because it's a small town close where we stayed, and it's basically it has a lot of African heritage. So in one of my my reflections that I did with the students that I read after the trip, I asked them about this place, the colorful of the place, the heritage of the place, the food of the place. And some of the students were African American. Some of their reactions or some of the writings, it's like they were saying like I felt like a connection with Loiza place because of the African heritage. The food it was different. It's not the same food, but we visited like a cultural center, and they have like a stage for music. I remember, and some paintings. And it has a lot of African heritage. So some of my students felt that connection with the place. And they describe the place, and they told me that I felt like a connection.
Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Reyes, did you see any students that are like, maybe, did you have any students that had never been out of the States and kind of saw
Yeah.
some of their some of their worldview kind of thoughts going through their heads like in real time? Anything you want to share about that?
Yeah, I actually, if I can think about the students, because we did some reflections over time. Like before leaving, they had to write reflections before leaving the mainland, while they were there, and at the end when they were coming back. And it was interesting to read those reflections because at the beginning you will notice some students had never ever left the States. And right, it was their first time away for 2 weeks from their family. And they will write about it and how difficult it was for them, how they had to prepare mentally for it. But then you will see how they were shy maybe at the beginning, and over time it's just like something awoken on them. And at the end, the writing was so much more happier and grateful for the experience. How much grateful they felt. Yes, they were homesick. They wanted to go back home, right, at some point, but they were still really happy to have experienced it. And I felt like I saw them lighting up, like being more cheerful after the experience.
I love that. And you both talk about reflection. When you look back on the experience and reflect about the whole trip and what your students learned and what you learned, is there anything that you would do differently next time in helping your students prepare for that kind of change?
I think we could definitely explore the culture a little bit more. I would want that. It's just something that you just want to do a sneak peek, right? But you don't want to give everything. So, but I feel like it will. We still had lectures where both groups met together and we talk about culture, we talk about the history, we talk about many things of the Puerto Rican culture. But doing more of it before will be good. And I think something that we are discussing is while in country, we stay close to the capital, which is a little bit more Americanized. So we would like to get a little bit of farther more often so that we can actually go into the more natural, more normal cultural areas.
Stutter bar, anything you want to add?
And just to explain a little bit about the classes, I think the biology were 4 credit hours. So they met in the spring for 2 hours and then 2 hours during the Puerto Rico trip. For it was 2 hours in the spring and 1 hour in Puerto Rico. So we were able to get together during the spring, I think 3 or 4 times. 3 times?
3 times. Yeah.
3 times. So I think I agree with Dr. Reyes, like we need to add a little bit of more cultural experience. We talked about it. We share about the heritage of Latin America in general, but I think we could be more specific about Puerto Rico. And then you talk about the history of Puerto Rico from 1898 to the present. And Dr. Weaver did some activities with culture in general. But I think it could serve the students better if we talk about cultural issues more like more deeply, like more in depth, and something that I can do better. It's not related to culture, but I was telling Dr. Reyes maybe we can meet during the spring and we can do like a trail around campus, so they are used to walk uh, a little bit more, because when we're going to visit different places, we walked a lot. So some of them were a little bit tired.
Mhm.
So we need to get them in that mode that we are going to Puerto Rico and we're going to experience the music, the food, the colorful, but also we're going to walk.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a good idea. That's
Yep.
a third department, exercise and sports science. Bring that program
Yeah.
into the collaboration here. So for someone who has never, like if someone's watching this and they've thought about studying abroad, they want to maybe enhance their program, they want to add in a high impact practice like this. How, like once you're there in Puerto Rico, like how did you teach your course outcomes for your biology class and your Spanish course? Like I know you said you met some before the trip, but when you're on site, like, I mean, there's no like lecture halls and, like how do you do, the teaching side of it? How does that work when you're like out of, off campus like that with students?
Well, the biodiversity of Puerto Rico, it's easy in terms that we're talking about a 100 by 30-mile island, super small, but you can drive 2 hours from one side to another and have a tropical forest on one side and a dry forest on the other side. And you can have caves and you can have bioluminescent bays. We went to a small island. So it is a perfect place to teach biodiversity because you can see so many different ecosystems, right, in just a 2-hour drive. We did stay at our university dorms, and we had access to their library. So our students, the biology students, had to present on a specific ecological site. And so the day before, maybe the day that we were going to that site, we would meet for an hour, and there were one student would present on that site, and other students will have to complete some worksheets based on what they learn, what they expect to see there.
What was the
And so
university you partnered with? What was their name?
Sagrado Corazón,
Okay. And where was
or
it?
Sacred Heart. Santurce is a small area of San Juan, which
Okay.
is the capital.
Okay.
What do you think the biggest challenge was for those students? Was it the language or getting around in a place they didn't know? What did you observe as challenging for them?
I think it was the language because for me, even though we met during the spring semester and I was teaching them how to communicate greetings and how to ask for things at the store or buy clothing at the mall because they love the mall, so they went to the mall. So how to communicate with other people when they're buying clothing, or I think that it's one thing doing it in the classroom and it's a total different thing doing it in face to face in the country. So I think it was challenging for some of them. And since our schedule is too packed, there's not enough time for me to meet with them and continue teaching them the language. So that's the reason I did it before. But I think another thing that I want to correct is that I have to meet with them, teach them while we are in the island and review the material. So they feel more confident with the language, even though we review it, but it was in the spring. So now I think I need to continue reviewing the material once we are there, so they feel more confident speaking the language. In some of their in their evaluations, they wanted more speaking activities. I feel that's something they struggle with while in Puerto Rico. Even though we did those speaking activities here, but I think that they have to be. I have to do those activities in Puerto Rico. Find the time.
Well, maybe you can make them. You mentioned they went to the library. You should
Yeah.
make them have a reference transaction with the librarian where they have to ask questions.
Yeah, to think about those kind of things, because the people in Puerto Rico, they speak both languages, but they prefer to speak Spanish. So yeah, so make them do activities like that. So I need to continue with the language, practicing the language, going to the library, going to a coffee place, and going to the store, and I need to go with them and hear that they're using the language.
It sounds like you had some student surveys at the end. So you had some indirect assessment that you got some good feedback on. And thinking about the course overall, I had shared with you, I thought this was an interesting thing, and I'll put it in the show notes and I'll show it up on the screen here for our viewers, is University of Indiana came up with a really good taxonomy, almost like a rubric for study abroad trips. And so just kind of doing sort of an informal self-evaluation of some of those highlights on that rubric. What are just some things that you feel like you did especially well that you would to continue doing that's on that list? Anything that stood out?
Well, if you think when me and Dr. Rene Ibarra, we were discussing it, definitely I think cultural expertise would be our highest impact. Mostly because we're both Hispanics, right? So we both can understand and speak the language. And I grew up in Puerto Rico, right? Like I was there for 23 years of my life. So I understand the culture, and it makes it a little bit easier to connect that or teach that or show that to the students. So we will be driving around. I'm like, oh, that's my high school. Or like we went to my mom's house and she cooked lunch for us, right? So at least it helps us immerse them more into the culture because we have connections there. So for me, obviously that was a plus for me doing that trip.
Yeah, that's great.
I think like you said, the cultural experience, we are fluent in the language. And also you were able to travel like 2 weeks before us. Dr. Weaver and I and the students. So you while you were there, you were doing like some networking with other people and calling your family members if they know someone to visit a place. So I think that was great that we were able to visit different places and you were able to connect with those people. When we were to the indigenous place, a professor from there was giving us a talk. And I think that was great. The immersion. So we have the salsa class, we have the cooking class. We went to Dr. Reyes' mom's house, so and we had a meal there. The students are staying in the dorms, and the students are interacting with some other students once in a while. So I think the immersion is another one. The cultural learning, I think we did well on that one. We had reflections. One of the in the rubric it says talks about reflection. We had reflections. I had reflections in my courses about the cultural experience, about food, music, what was nature. Um, yep, reflection. Dr. Ed, do you remember another one?
I think reflections were really good. This is something I guess I'm gonna talk about what I think we can improve. Right, like we're doing this interdisciplinary trip, and I was thinking about how can we connect at some point both groups because we all go to every place together, but they do the Spanish, we do the biology. And at some point, we had this idea to connect them where we had pictures of different organisms that they can see in the tropical forest. And we pair a biology student with a Spanish student. The biology students knew what they will expect to see, right? Because we lecture on it. And they were helping. There was a game where, like, okay, let's see which pair can identify the most organisms. And we saw how the Spanish students got really interested on finding, right, or identify, and instead of just hiking the forest, right, but really even learning a little bit more about biology. And I think that would be good. And then they can reflect on it. And like, what did you learn? Something new about not even the class that you were registered on.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's really that's neat. So we're getting close to the end of our time. Jennifer, do you have any final question? And then we're getting close to closing this episode out.
Yeah, no, I just love how both of you are reflecting so much kind of about the pedagogical practices as well that you did and how you could improve them. We definitely, when they're little, one of the ways they say we learn things is being able to teach others how to do it. So, like, you are really kind of that you're just walking through would be a really good scaffolded way to help them get from understanding the concept of being able to teach their partner when you partner them up there in the forest or whatnot. I guess my last question here that I have for you, because I have so many, this just sounds like a really enriching experience. It sounds fun. I think you could easily add other areas or focuses onto it. You can tweak it a little bit to your own interests or to other subjects or topics. But if you had another faculty member come up to you and say, hey, I want to do a trip to somewhere. How do I get started? What kind of advice would you give that faculty to get started on a study abroad project?
You can start, Rene.
I will say do it. I think that the most difficult thing to do is to find a place that is going to align to you it's going to align to the student learning outcomes. What are your objectives? And once you have that place, I think the best help you can get is from the Global Engagement Office and talk to Donna Waldron. Do it, find the best place that's going to suit your objectives. And then I think the third step is go talk to Dr. Waldron. She's going to help you with all the paperwork and she's going to give you advice about risk management, budgeting, those kind of things that the logistics, if we use a vehicle or we don't use a vehicle or what are the rules. I think that's the third step if you want to have you want to start with a study abroad program.
I guess I will just close with you, Dr. Reyes and Dr. Ibarra. Any final thoughts for our audience about anything related to what we talked about that you would like to share with anyone watching this about this topic of study abroad?
I guess I can say I honestly never thought I would be doing it, but it has been great, right? Starting here and being asked, do you want to do it? I was like, but I'm glad I said yes right away because I honestly can't wait to do it again every other year. It's been really fun.
Is that's the plan every other year to
Hmm.
do this trip? Okay, cool. Dr. Ibarra, anything you want to add? Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. If you're a student and you're listening to this, or you are a parent of one of the students, we're gonna start planning for the 2027 trip, and once again, it's gonna be Spanish and biology. And I hope I'm gonna be able to make some changes and incorporate more things that are valuable for the students. Yeah.
I always tell my students when they're doing a research project, the most important thing is to have some passion or interest in the project you're doing. And you both demonstrate that with your love of Puerto Rico and teaching. And I think that just a student being able to interact and see your enthusiasm might help them decide that it might be the right thing for them.
So I guess my final thing is just to kind of thank you guys for kind of, I guess, doing this high impact practice, because we know these high impact practices require more time and effort and that kind of thing. But we know that, the research shows that it's much more valuable for our students. This kind of active learning is such a powerful experience and something they'll never forget. Well, thank you all for being with us today. And thank you, Jennifer, as always. And thank you to you for listening or watching this and for continuing in the scholarship of high impact practices. And I encourage you to give this study abroad global learning high impact practice. If you have not ever tried it before, maybe it's time to start planning and visioning for what this might look like in your course or your particular context. So again, God bless and go be a hipster camel. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.